Part 2. Chapter 5, Secrets of the Island. The path ran deeper into the island, twisting and turning like a serpent winding through the mist. The fog thickened around them, and the air grew colder, making Parker's skin prickle with unease. With every step, the whispers grew louder and clearer, as if the island itself was speaking directly to them. "We're close," Alethea whispered, her eyes searching the fog. "I can feel it in my bones." Parker nodded, sensing the pull of the island's magic as it tugged at their thoughts and memories. He held his twin girls and squeezed Alethea's hand, drawing strength from their presence beside him. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. Parker stumbled, catching himself just before he fell. The path they were on had split, leading in two different directions. One path led up a rocky incline, disappearing into the dense fog, while the other descended into a dark, shadowy valley. "What now?" Kaylee asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Which way do we go?" Parker hesitated, glancing between the two paths. Both seemed equally dangerous, and the pull of the island's magic tugged at them in different directions. "We need to choose carefully and quickly," Parker said, his voice steady. "The wrong path could lead us into danger that is fast approaching." Haley stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the path leading up the incline. "I think we should go this way," she said. "It feels safer." Parker trusted Haley's instincts. She had always been sensitive to the energies around them. "All right," he agreed. "Thank you, sweetheart, we'll take the path up." They began to climb the rocky path, the incline growing steeper with each step. The fog seemed to grow thicker, obscuring their vision and muffling the sounds of their footsteps. Parker felt a growing tension in his chest, a sense of urgency pressing down on him. After what felt like hours, they reached a grand plateau. The fog cleared just enough for them to see a large stone archway standing before them, covered in green moss and ancient runes that glowed faintly in the dim and foggy light. Beyond the archway, the mist swirled in a vortex, like a gateway that led to another world. Parker stepped forward, his eyes carefully scanning the runes inscribed into the rock face. He recognized some of the symbols from an old book Geigerstan had shared with him when he had visited her at her cottage filled with stories of ancient magic and forgotten secrets. "It's a doorway," he said slowly. "I'm positive. It's a gateway to something, somewhere, beyond." As they approached the archway, the whispers grew louder, filling their ears with a cacophony of voices. Parker felt a strange sensation in his mind, as if the island itself was now speaking to him, urging him to turn back, to leave before it was too late. "Do you hear that?" Kaylee asked, her face pale as she covered her ears. "It's like the island is trying to talk to us." Parker nodded, his mind racing. "Yes. The island is alive somehow," he said, echoing Lorien's words. "I think it's trying to protect something it doesn't want us to find." Suddenly, a tall figure emerged from the mist on the other side of the archway. It was Lorien, his hood once again obscuring much of his face, but his presence unmistakable. "You've come far," he said, his voice carrying a stern note of warning. "Stop right there. This is as far as you should go," he said, raising both hands. Parker squared his shoulders, stepping forward. "We're not turning back, Lorien," he said firmly. "We've come to find the truth and help the people of Digger-Diggador." Lorien raised his hand, and the runes on the archway began to glow brighter. "Have you now?" "The truth is not what you think," he said, his voice softening. "To step through this gateway is to face the truth of your own past, the memories you have hidden even from yourself." "Are you truly prepared for that?" Parker hesitated, his heart pounding, nervously reaching in his pocket to hold his ring of keys for a moment of peace and stillness. He looked back at his family, seeing the fear and determination in their eyes. He knew they had come too far to turn back now. "We're ready," he said, his voice steady. Lorien held up a hand and nodded slowly, stepping aside. "Only you are allowed to step forward, Parker. Your family must stay here. Now be forewarned, the cost of the truth is higher than you can imagine." Taking a deep breath, Parker nervously stepped through the archway, feeling an incredible rush of energy wash over him. As he crossed the threshold, the fog seemed to part, revealing a vast expanse of his memories, laid out before him like a tapestry. Faces and scenes from his past rapidly flickered around him, some familiar, others strange and unsettling. Parker felt a pull toward one particular vision, not a memory he remembered, but a scene that seemed vaguely familiar, yet distant, like a dream. Suddenly, the vision unfolded before him. He saw his father, Corrist, standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, holding baby Rolanda. It was similar to the incredible dream vision Karina had granted him, where he had witnessed his own birth, watching in disbelief as his mother Laro gave birth to Rolanda. But this time, Corrist was deep in conversation with a hooded figure, Lorien, whose presence felt deeply unsettling. "You must perform the ritual, Corrist," Lorien exclaimed, his voice firm but not unkind. "Queen Sierra's conditions are clear: bind the spirit Darker to the island, and you and the child will be granted safe passage aboard her ship Ezra to the mainland of Lazarus. But remember, this bond will tie your fate to this island's magic forever." Corrist's face was pale, a look of dread etched in his eyes. "I understand," he replied, his voice heavy with reluctance. "I must protect my son from King Snake's madness. I'll do whatever it takes. Please, let's get this over with so that I can take my son somewhere safe." As Corrist began the ritual, Parker felt the scene shift and change. The island's magic seemed to pulse around them, reacting to the words and actions of his father. Parker realized this was no ordinary memory, it was a projection from the island itself, a representation of the past tied to the island's fate. Lorien's voice echoed around him, though his figure was nowhere to be seen. "This is the choice your father made, Parker. He bound the spirit Darker to protect you, to secure your escape, but he did not fully understand the consequences." Parker's heart pounded as he watched his father complete the ritual, binding Darker to the island. He could see the deep pain and regret in Corrist's eyes, a burden he carried for the rest of his life. Darker, the spirit, an ethereal being of light and shadow, was now tied to the island, its power feeding on memories, drawing strength from the past. "This is the secret I kept from you," the voice of the vision continued, now sounding more like Gigastan's but fading, almost as if the island itself spoke through her with a tinge of sadness. "Darker's hunger is endless, its need to consume memories growing with each passing year. To release it, you must sever the bond, at a cost." Parker felt a surge of fear and confusion. "What's the cost?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The cost," the vision said, Gigastan's voice shifting and growing faint, "is a part of yourself, Parker. A memory that defines you, that holds your greatest joy or deepest pain. You must decide whether to keep it or let it go, to save your family and break this island's curse. Only you can decide. Choose wisely, sweet boy." The vision began to fade, the island's magic pulling back as if waiting for Parker's choice. He looked back at his family through the other side of the old stone gateway, their faces filled with fear and uncertainty. He knew this was a crushing moment of truth, a moment that would absolutely define not just his fate, but the fate of everyone he loved. Taking another deep breath, Parker squared his shoulders, his resolve hardening. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. And just then he recalled his bold pronunciation to the people of Digadigador when he first returned to the shores of the realm so many years ago. "Behold, my people of Digadigador. It is I, Rolanda, your long-lost prince. I am the savior that was promised to you many years ago by the wise sorceress Gigastand. I have returned to bring about a new era of peace, prosperity, and unity." The words rang true and clear in his mind, he knew exactly what he must do. "I'll make the sacrifice. I won't let this evil island keep my people trapped any longer." With that, he reached out toward the fading vision, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the cost would be great, but the reward, freedom for his family and his people, would be worth it. Chapter 6: The Choice and the Sacrifice. The air around Parker felt heavy, as if the very atmosphere pressed down upon him with an almost tangible force. He stood at the threshold of the stone archway, the weight of Gigastan's words echoing in his mind, "The cost of the truth is higher than you can imagine." His family stood just beyond the archway, their faces blurred by the swirling mist, but he could still see the fear and hope in their eyes. He could sense the island's magic pulling at him, urging him to act, to choose. Parker's mind raced, grappling with the choice before him. To sever the bond and free the spirit darker, he had to sacrifice a memory, a part of himself that held his greatest joy or deepest pain. The realization struck him like a hammer blow. This wasn't just about his past. It was about who he was, who he had become, and what he was willing to lose to save those he loved. As he stood there, Parker closed his eyes and allowed himself to drift into his memories. Images of his life flashed before him, his time in Lazarus, his return to Digger-Digger-Dor, the moment he discovered his true identity as Prince Rolander, and the love he found with Alethea and their daughters. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of his life, each one precious and defining. He felt a strange tug, a sensation that seemed to pull him toward two specific memories. His heart clenched as he recognized them, the day he first met Alethea and the day his mother Laro was restored to life through Gigerstan's spell. The memory of meeting Alethea was vivid, filled with warmth and light. He could see her smile, hear her laugh, feel the connection that had sparked between them from the very beginning. It was a memory that brought him immense joy, a joy that had shaped his life in so many ways. The memory of his mother's return was just as powerful. He remembered the disbelief, the overwhelming happiness, and the sense of being whole for the first time. It was the moment his family had been made complete, a memory that brought him comfort and closure. Parker's breath caught in his throat as he realized the choice before him. He could sacrifice the memory of meeting Alethea, losing the joy and love that had defined his life with his wife and children. Or he could give up the memory of his mother's return, losing the sense of wholeness and belonging that had shaped his identity as a son and heir. Both choices carried a heavy cost, and both would change him forever. Lorien's voice cut through the fog, steady and calm. "Remember, Parker, the choice you make is yours alone. What you decide will shape not only your fate, but the fate of those you love." Parker opened his eyes, his heart pounding with the enormity of his choice. He met Alethea's gaze, searching for strength in her eyes. "What if I choose wrong?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What if this takes away something we can't get back?" Alethea reached out, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Parker, we trust you. I trust you. Whatever choice you make, we'll face the consequences together. As a family." Taking several deep breaths, Parker turned back to the archway. "I've made my decision." His voice trembled as he spoke, each word heavy with the weight of his decision. "I choose to give up the memory of my mother's return. Her smile, her warmth. I give it all up. For us, for our future." As soon as the words left his lips, Parker felt a rush of energy surge through him, pulling at the memory like a tidal wave. He gasped, the sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. The memory of his mother's return began to fade, the edges blurring and softening, until it was like a distant dream, something he could no longer fully grasp. But as those thoughts faded, he felt something else, a sense of relief, a lightness that spread through him like a balm. The feeling of wholeness he had cherished was gone, but in its place was a sense of peace, a resolve that came from knowing he had chosen his present, his wife, and his children over his past. The archway before him shimmered, the runes glowing with a brilliant light, and the ground began to shake. Parker could feel the island's magic reacting to his choice, the bond beginning to unravel. The spirit darker that had been bound to the island for so long seemed to stir, its presence shifting like a shadow in the mist. Lorien stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. "Congratulations, Parker. You have chosen wisely. By releasing this memory, you have freed not only yourself but the island and its people. Darker, the island's spirit hunger will no longer consume the memories of the people of Digger-Digger-Dor." The air around Parker was thick with tension, the weight of his unbearable decision settling heavily on his shoulders. He had chosen to give up the memory of his mother's return, a choice that had torn at his heart. But as he turned back to his family, he saw their anxious faces come into focus through the lifting fog, clear and bright, filled with a mix of love, relief, and pride. Alethea's eyes were brimming with tears, her smile trembling but radiant with pride and love. "You did it, Parker," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She rushed forward, her arms reaching out to him as if to pull him back from the edge of despair. Parker stumbled toward her, his legs weak with the weight of the realization. He felt her arms encircle him, pulling him into a tight embrace. The warmth of her body against his was a balm to his aching soul, a reminder of why he had made his choice. "I had to," he murmured, his voice breaking. "I had to save all of you. I couldn't let you suffer because of my past." Alethea tightened her hold, her tears mingling with his. "We know, Parker. We know," she whispered, her voice soothing and filled with understanding. "We love you. You did what you had to do. You chose us, and we're here because of you." Kaylee and Haley ran forward, their faces flushed with a mixture of joy and sadness. "We love you, Papa!" Haley cried out, her small hands reaching for him. "We're so proud of you. We knew you could do it." Kaylee, usually the more reserved of the two, threw herself into the embrace, her arms wrapping tightly around her father's waist. "You're so brave, Papa," she said, her voice quivering with a mix of admiration and heartbreak. "You saved us all." Parker knelt down, pulling his daughters close, feeling the warmth of their love and their small bodies pressed against him. Tears streamed down their faces as he held them, their hearts aching with a mix of profound sadness and overwhelming love. "I love you both so much," Parker whispered, his voice breaking. "I would do anything for you. Always remember that." As they stood together, the spirit darker that had been bound to the island began to dissolve, its ethereal form fading like mist in the evening sun. The runes on the archway dimmed, their light waning as the magic that had held the island in its grip slowly released its hold. The air around them seemed to lighten, the oppressive weight lifting as if the island itself was finally exhaling after holding its breath for so long. Even the fog continued to lift, revealing more of the beautiful green and lush landscape around them, a place that had once been shrouded in darkness and mystery, now bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The light cast long shadows across the ground, creating a serene and almost sacred atmosphere. Parker looked up at the archway, watching as the mysterious runes faded into the stone, their glow extinguished. A wave of grief and relief washed over him, assuming his mother would now be at peace, even though her presence in his life would be erased. It was a sacrifice that cut deep, but he knew it was the right choice to save his family and his people. As he held his family close, Alethea pressed her forehead against his, her eyes searching his, her breath warm on his face. "I'm here, Parker," she whispered, her voice firm and reassuring. "It's over. We are here. And we'll get through this together, as we always have." Parker nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude and love for his family. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, but he also knew that with his family by his side, he could face anything. The pain of losing the memory of his mother's return would linger, a wound that would never fully heal, but it was a reminder of the strength and resilience of love and family, the true anchors of his life. As the last remnants of the spirit darker's presence faded away, Parker took several calming breaths, feeling a new sense of clarity and purpose, yet most of all relieved. He knew that his journey was not yet completely over, but the worst was behind him and he was ready to face whatever came next. For his family, for his people, and for the future they would build together. And as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the sea, Parker felt a surge of new hope and new determination. He had made the ultimate sacrifice, but it was a sacrifice born of love, a love that would guide him through the darkest of times and into the light of a new dawn. Lorien approached and lowered his hood, revealing a face filled with wisdom and compassion. "Your journey has been both difficult and challenging, yet I regret to inform you that it's not over, Parker," he said softly. "But you have taken the first step toward healing. The island's curse is lifted, but there is still much to be done to restore what has been lost and what has been forgotten now." Parker's brow furrowed, his heart beginning to race with anxiety. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice tinged with a mix of fear, outrage, and a great deal of confusion. "I made my choice. I gave up my mother's return to free the island and the people of Digger-Diggador. What more is there to do?" Lorien's eyes softened with understanding, yet there was a glint of sadness in them. Parker, by choosing to relinquish the memory of your mother's return, you have erased all of her, not just the memory, but the very reality of that entire event. Think about it this way: because of your decision, your mother never came back through Geigerstan's spell. She never returned, never met your wife or children, never reunited with Korist, and she never had a life with you. Remember, it is as if she died at childbirth all those years ago and never came back. All the moments you shared after her return, all the joy and healing, all those memories have been undone as if they never existed. Parker felt the world tilt beneath his feet, his breath catching in his throat. He staggered as his vision blurred with tears. The memory of his mother's smile flashed before him, the warmth of her arms around him, a feeling of completeness that had defined his life. "No, no," he cried out, his voice breaking. "This can't be real. How can all those moments, our time together, every laugh, every embrace, be gone like they never happened?" Lorien's voice softened, a deep sadness coloring his tone. "Yes, Parker. This is the profound consequence of your choice. The magic here is ancient, powerful. It doesn't just erase what was remembered, it reshapes reality itself. The mother who held you, who loved you as you grew, that life has been unmade. It's as if she never left the day of your birth." Parker's legs felt weak, his heart aching and breaking with the weight of the revelation. A sharp, hollow pain spread through his chest, as if something vital had been ripped away. He stumbled backward, off balance, his mind spinning and struggling to comprehend the enormity of what he had lost. The joyful moments with his mother, the feeling of being complete, all wiped away as if they had never been. His breath came in ragged gasps, each one a struggle against the tightening band of grief constricting his chest. But I had to save them," Parker whispered, tears welling in his eyes, spilling over and running down his cheeks unchecked. His voice cracked, desperate for some solace. "I had to save my family, my people. I had to. I did what I thought was right. So why do I feel so lost, so empty?" Lorien stepped closer, his own expression mirroring Parker's pain, placing a hand gently on Parker's shoulder. "But you did the best you could, Parker. You made a sacrifice for the greater good, for the love of your family and your kingdom. It is a heavy burden, but it is also a noble and righteous one. And now, you must live with that choice and move forward, knowing that you have the strength to face whatever comes next. Remember, the depth of your loss only mirrors the depth of your love." Parker closed his eyes, the tears streaming down his cheeks. Images of his mother danced behind his closed eyelids, her laughter, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the stories she would tell him at night. The loss cut deep, knowing this was a wound that would never fully heal. But he knew Lorien was right. He had made his choice, and he would have to live with it. For his family, for his people, and for the future they would build together. He knew his mother would have understood and blessed his decision. Alethea stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears, but her voice strong. "Parker, we are here. We're with you. Always." Parker opened his eyes and turned to her, feeling her strength bolster his own. He nodded, wiping his red, swollen eyes. He looked at his daughters, who reached out for him, their small hands full of trust and love. They were all he had now, and he would do everything in his power to protect them. "Let's go home," he said softly, his voice filled with determination, a slight quiver betraying the pain still lodged in his heart. "We have a new life to build." As they turned to leave the island, Parker felt a sense of closure, a sense that they had finally begun to break free from the shadows of the past. The path ahead was still uncertain, but he knew they would walk it together, guided by the love and strength that bound them. And as the sun began to set over the island, casting a warm golden glow over the sea, Parker heard the echo of his own voice in his mind, a reminder of the promise he had made so long ago. "I am the savior that was promised to you many years ago by the wise sorceress Geigerstand. I have returned to bring about a new era of peace, prosperity, and unity." With a final glance back at the archway, Parker took Alethea's hand and ushered his twin girls forward, leading them down from the plateau. As he led his family back toward the shore, Ezra's words echoed in his mind. "I'm here waiting for you, Parker. Ready to take you and your family back home." As they approached the shore, Ezra's voice, filled with warmth and wisdom, resonated softly in their minds. Parker, every journey is filled with choices that shape who we are and who we become. Your sacrifice today is not the end, but a new beginning. Remember, the strength of a person is not in what they lose, but in what they choose to build from the loss. Memories fade, but the love and courage that guided you will forever light your path forward. Parker paused, feeling the truth of Ezra's words settle deep within him. He nodded, a small but grateful smile forming on his lips. He looked at his family, their faces filled with a mixture of exhaustion and hope, and he realized that this journey, with all its trials and heartbreak, had brought them closer together. He squeezed Alethea's hand and then gently touched the tops of his daughters' heads. "Ezra is right," he said softly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We may have lost something precious today, but we still have each other. And as long as we hold on to that, we can overcome anything." Alethea leaned her head against Parker's shoulder, drawing strength from his words. Together, she whispered, echoing his sentiment. "We can face whatever comes next, together." Kaylee and Haley nodded, their faces brightening with renewed determination. As a family, Kaylee added, her voice firm and clear. Ezra's sails fluttered gently in the breeze, the ship's presence comforting and steady. The journey ahead may still have its challenges, but remember that you are never alone. The bond of family, the power of love, and the courage to move forward, these are the true treasures of life. And they will always be with you, guiding you home. With those words, Ezra's gangplank lowered to the shore, inviting them aboard. Parker took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of sorrow and hope, of loss and love. He led his family onto the ship, each step lighter than the last, as the weight of the past began to lift. As they set sail back to Digador, the setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and orange. The island of lost memories slowly faded into the distance, but Parker knew that its lessons, and the love that had carried them through, would remain in their hearts forever. Together, they looked forward to the horizon, ready to embrace the future that awaited them, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it as one. And as the wind filled Ezra's sails, carrying them home, Parker felt a quiet peace settle over him, a peace born of sacrifice, of love, and of a journey well traveled. Parker then realized, after everything was said and done, the end of one chapter was simply the beginning of another.